Stewart will be joining us. So this is an amendment to an activity envelope and site plan review for Block 6, Lot 2, Filing 1, Brush Creek Village subdivision. The applicant is La Indreti. You guys can help me with that when you do the presentation. The applicants are represented by Flynn Stewart Severy of FM&M Architects and Mike Kramer of Kramer Land Planning. I'm the hearing officer in this matter, and then Leslie Lamont is the Pitkin County planner who has been handling the case. Just as a preliminary matter, Mike and Flynn, I've noted in the staff memo that staff is recommending to continue the case for some additional information. And I didn't know if you both had thoughts on how you wanted to move forward with it. I think we could go ahead and move forward with presentation from you, and I note that the owners are present as well. After Leslie does her presentation, we could take public comment, and then I think based on her comments, we'll likely continue it. Additionally, we don't have an administrative modification for me to base a decision off of, or if you guys want to take what she suggested under advisement, we can go ahead and continue it if you guys are not prepared to move forward with the hearing today. Either one is fine.
Thanks for that, Sarah. We're thinking, if it's all right with you, staff, Leslie does her presentation, and then public comment, and then we've prepared a presentation too. And should you want to continue the application with staff's recommendation, we're okay with that, and we're prepared to take a continuance. But we'd like to kind of get some of the things on the record and just show why we provided the site plan we did.
Okay, great. That is fine with me. Leslie, are you ready to go forward, make a presentation too?
Sure.
Okay. So also as a preliminary matter, I guess anybody who is not presenting, if you could please mute your speakers so that we don't get feedback. And then Leslie, we're all set. We've got the affidavit for public notice, and we're good there.
I'd have to double check that.
Okay.
I need to look in Sages and see if that's there. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Okay.
The reason why I hesitate on that is this was originally scheduled for a deadline for public comments in the beginning of October of 2021. So I'll be able to check that while the applicant and their team are making a presentation.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So as you noted, this property is in Brush Creek Village subdivision. It's a vacant lot, and it was the subject of a couple different administrative level reviews to establish an activity envelope. The last one was in 2019, and that activity envelope was approved with the condition that site plan review was required. The applicant proposes to construct a new single-family residence. Objections from neighbors came in as part of the public notice process, and that is what then kicked this up to the hearing officer level. So I'll review really quickly why staff is recommending a continuance in this, and as we just established, the applicant does want to make presentation, and we do know that there are neighbors tuning into this webinar as well. So the proposed home is in conflict with two sections of the code. Section 7-20-20 steep and potentially unstable slopes, and section 7-20-120 scenic view protection areas. The location of the home, which is within the previously approved activity envelope, avoids slopes greater than 30%. However, the location is highly visible from Highway 82 and Brush Creek scenic corridors. The home breaks the ridgeline as viewed from Brush Creek Road. The location cannot utilize topography and existing vegetation to help screen the home. And there were no samples or cut sheets of exterior materials and colors provided for us to utilize the standards in the code about development, complementing the surrounding environment. Because of the two conflicting code sections, staff recommends using section 7-10-1. I'm sorry, section 7-60 of the code, specifically the administrative modification section, to develop the best plan, the best design possible for this proposal. It is suggested that the applicant explore redesign that reduces the ridgeline, consider using slopes greater than 30%, but less than 45%. And the applicant needs to provide an accurate color and material palette. It is because of those suggestions that I'm recommending a continuance to February 15th in order to give the applicant and the applicant's team and a time to redesign that can attempt to the greatest extent practical meet the standards of our code. As well as this should provide time for the team to meet with the neighbors and talk over this proposal with the neighbors. So we know that the applicant has remarks, and that's it for me unless anybody has questions, and I'll turn it over to the applicant's team.
Thanks, Leslie. Mike and Flynn, if you guys want to go ahead.
Okay. Did you want to do public comment now, Sarah, or should we do our presentation now?
I would prefer that you guys do your presentation first, if that works for you.
Okay, yeah, that's fine with us. Okay, I've got a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm gonna share my screen. So just give me 1 second to do that.
Let me just say, while you're doing that, Mike, I want to interrupt. Flynn did send me the affidavit of public notice and mailing and photos of the public notice sign up on the property. Thank you, Flynn.
Thanks, Flynn. Okay, can everybody see my screen, the presenter mode for the, it should say Lindrit LLC, Eduardo and Pato Rabasa.
Any scallops? Caleb's catch.
Oop, what's that? Sarah, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay. All right, just making sure. Okay. So thank you. My name is Mike Kramer, helping property owners Eduardo and Pato Rabasa, who have submitted a Pitkin County activity envelope and site plan application for construction of a new residence and attached garage on vacant property off of Red Tail Lane. And on the call are Eduardo and Pato Rabasa, owners of the property, and Flynn Stewart Severy, architect for the project. And our presentation will outline existing conditions, property background, and then recent land use history that Leslie just brought up just now. And then we'll also provide some information on the regulatory requirements for this development. And then we'd like to show our site plan and architectural drawings, and then conclude with any questions that you might have, Sarah. So here's a vicinity map of the area with the subject property highlighted in blue. The property is located in the middle of the 1966 Board of County Commissioner approved Brush Creek subdivision off of Red Tail Lane. The property can be accessed from Medicine Bow Road via Brush Creek Road or Juniper Hill Road via Highway 82 on the other side. The applicant's property is adjacent to other single-family residential lots developed in the Brush Creek subdivision, and the subject lot is the last vacant property on Red Tail Lane. This is an overall site map of the property highlighted in blue. The subject property is 2.1 acres in size and is located within the AR10 zone district, making it non-conforming in size, but platted within a subdivision and retaining a growth management quota system exemption for a development right of 5,750 square feet of floor area. The lot has an east and southeast aspect and contains dryland vegetation that is mostly comprised of oak brush on the property. The northwestern portion of the property is the least steep portion, containing slopes between 15% and 30%, and it's also nearest to Red Tail Lane. The eastern and southern portions of the property in an area near Red Tail Lane are steeper, with slopes between 30% and 45%. The red on this slide here indicates slopes 45% and greater. So you can see from the slope map that the western portion of the lot is less steep, while the eastern portion of the lot is much steeper. According to the Pitkin County avalanche hazard mapping, the property is mapped within a potential avalanche area highlighted in red. The property is also located within a mapped severe wildfire hazard area, consistent with the surrounding Brush Creek neighborhood and subdivision. The Brush Creek Metropolitan District supplies potable water, and the property is also within the Brush Creek Landowners Association and is subject to preliminary and final design from the Architectural Review Committee. In 2019, as Leslie mentioned, an activity envelope was approved for the property pursuant to Administrative Decision Number 15-2019. This envelope was cited to avoid the steepest portions of the lot, so basically slopes greater than 45% to the east, and then steeper slopes near Red Tail Lane. The approval only designated an activity envelope and did not approve a site plan. The 2019 approval required that prior to building permit submittal, a site plan review and approval was required. There are a number of conditions in the 2019 approval, but we wanted to highlight one of the conditions, conditions 3C of Administrative Decision 15-2019, which states demonstrate as much of the floor area as can feasibly be accommodated is placed within the portion of the activity envelope that contains slopes of less than 30%. And then it goes on to say pursuant to Land Use Code Section 7-2020C2 of the code. So this slide here is showing the area of slopes that are less than 30% highlighted in yellow. Eduardo and Pato request site plan review and approval. And if approval is granted, they would apply for a Pitkin County building permit and commence construction once the permit is ready for issuance. And Eduardo and Pato plan on living at the property once construction is completed. A slight amendment to the previously approved activity envelope is requested to include portions of the property near to Red Tail Lane. Proposed envelope is highlighted in blue on this slide, and these areas will be used for driveway construction and associated retaining walls. It should be noted that the proposed site plan complies with all AR10 setback requirements, and no variances for structures or driveways are requested with the site plan. The residence including garage and potential basement is 4,472 square feet in size. The proposal for the site plan is over 1,000 square feet smaller than the growth management quota system exemption of 5,750 square feet. And Sarah, we'd like to just take a minute to provide some background and details on a proposed site plan so that you are aware how we decided upon the proposed development plan for the property. This area in blue, the proposed septic field, is located here. And we're starting with this aspect of the development plan because this is topographically the highest portion on the property. The design team was cognizant of this constraint in this elevation, and for scenic review considerations, avoided placing the residence in this location to reduce scenic impact from Brush Creek Road and Highway 82. The proposed septic field obviously will be underground and will not be visible. The residence is proposed north of the septic field, located on the least steep portion of the property. and including the lowest topographical elevation in this preferred area. We chose this location to show compliance with condition 3C of Administrative Decision 15-2019, requiring that as much floor area can be developed on slopes less than 30%. This location for the residents also avoids tearing up the steep hillside and impacting slopes below. The proposed driveway is located west of the residence and accessed off Red Tail Lane. This area was also chosen to reduce impact to steep slopes while maintaining code compliance with width and grade. Alternative driveway alignments were explored, but the impact to steep slopes lower on the property were too severe. Retaining walls associated with the proposed driveway have also been designed by a licensed civil engineer. And we show the retaining walls on the western part of the hammerhead and then west of the garage on this site plan. We'd like to point out again that the proposed site plan is setback compliant in the AR10 zone district, and we're not requesting any variances. This slide shows the proposed residential footprint and property boundaries. The dark highlighted area is the Pitkin County map potential avalanche area overlaid onto the proposed building footprint plan. As you can see, the proposed residence was cited to avoid this hazard in compliance with Land Use Code Section 7-10-60A, which states that development shall be located on a portion of a site that is free from constrained areas and where the proposed activity or development would comply with this land use code and the comprehensive plan if such area exists. So in an effort to avoid the map potential avalanche constraint and show compliance with this land use code section, the residence was cited in the most appropriate location on the property. So we're going to get just quickly into architecture and design, and Flynn Stewart Severy with F&M Architects is on the call, and he will go through some of the design intent with the proposed residence. So Flynn, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. A large portion of the design of this home is based on the driveway, and developing a code compliant driveway required putting the driveway at the lowest elevation, so we could come in with our a slope of 12% or less on our driveway. In addition to bringing that driveway into the property, we also had to provide a hammerhead because Pitkin County engineers do not like it when you're backing your car out into the right of way. They prefer that anyone who has a driveway has the ability to turn their vehicle around prior to exiting out into the right of way. The floor plan that's presented here is the main level floor plan, and what Eduardo and Pato asked my firm to do was to develop a single floor living plan. This is Eduardo and Pato are in their 50s. They would like to retire and live in this home for the rest of their lives. And part of that request was to develop a floor plan that allowed them to not have to use stairs. And so the main level plan includes the garage, laundry room, kitchen, living room, dining, and a master suite. As they age, they would not need to use the stairs to go up or downstairs. There is a basement plan as part of our application, but contingent to that basement plan and identified in our application is the geotechnical soils report, which states that there's a lot of bedrock on this property, and the basement may be abandoned if we start to do excavation and deem it not viable, or if we have to get into blasting and whatever it requires to excavate that basement. The upper level floor plan consists of 2 guest suites and nothing else. Can you go to the next slide, Mike?
Yep.
Presented here is the north and south elevation. and these are probably the best graphically to present the home as it would sit on the site. Our existing slope is delineated by a 30% angled dashed line. And our building height limit is mirrored kind of parallel to that dashed line, 28 feet up in the air. The design, while I know that some of the public comment was that views were being obstructed, the design tried very hard to not obstruct neighbors' views. One of the things that's required that hasn't come up yet is, wildfire rules request a 312 roof slope. We are not accommodating or meeting that requirement. We're going to work with the fire department to do a lower pitch slope roof. Our main roof is a 112 roof pitch. And so essentially what we've done is we have almost met our building height requirement, our building height limit, which is 28 feet, but we've only done that in one vertical plane, essentially the far eastern edge of the house. At its most restrictive limit is 27 feet, 10 inches. But everything west of that vertical plane where grid line A is, everything to the west of that, so to the left on the top drawing, to the right on the bottom drawing, is well below our allowable building height limit. If we were trying to meet wildfire regulations, I would put a 312 roof pitch on this that parallels our roof slope. That would give us more volume. That would give us higher ceiling heights. The home that's designed currently has 9-foot ceilings on the main level and 9-foot ceilings on the upper level. These are not, at least in the homes I currently design, these are not palatial spaces and interior volumes that are grotesque or excessive in my experience. And in addition to, we do have a second story above kind of our living room, dining room, kitchen area. But we refrained from building a second story on top of the garage. When I originally spoke to Eduardo and Pato, we discussed, how to maximize this site. And part of that included building another guest suite above the garage that could be connected to the secondary volume on the main mass. And they declined to construct that suite. Essentially our building height where the garage is 14 feet, not 28 feet. And I think Mike kind of reiterated that we're 1,000 square feet below our allowable floor area for this property. I think that's
perfect, Flynn.
That's my story.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We just have a few more slides, Sarah, and we're going to go through quickly here. The property is mapped within a scenic review protection area as viewed from Highway 82 and Brush Creek Road, both designated scenic corridors. So we constructed height poles to mimic the roof lines of the new residence. And this slide shows these height poles circled in blue here and the proposed residence, and it is ridgeline compliant from Highway 82. So this slide here is from Highway 82. While the proposed residence is ridgeline compliant from 82, it will obstruct a ridgeline as viewed from Brush Creek Road, approximately where the bus stop is located. The Brush Creek subdivision contains a number of residences that obstruct ridge lines, and the subject property, given its location, topography, and site constraints, is no different. Given administrative decision number 15-2019's direction to develop as much floor area as can feasibly be accommodated on slopes less than 30%, and the land use code's direction to avoid steeper slopes and geologic hazards such as potential avalanche areas, the proposed location is the only alternative. So pursuant to land use code section 7-20-120D4, which states the structure shall not silhouette against the sky when viewed from those corridors listed in subsection B. In this case, it's Brush Creek Road and Highway 82, unless there is no alternative building site on the lot or parcel. The design team has avoided site constraints to the maximum extent practicable, and there are no alternative locations to avoid silhouetting the residents against the skyline when avoiding these hazards. So therefore, we think that land use code section 7-20-120D4 should be considered by the hearing officer. And as you can see in this slide here, this is where the height poles and that view from the Brush Creek Road bus stop is showing this ridgeline obstruction. So some key considerations, the Pitkin County height limit of 28 feet to a midpoint and then 33 feet to the ridge are the maximum that can be built in Pitkin County. On the south elevation, as Flynn was saying, the maximum height is 24 feet 10 inches, and on the north elevation is 27 feet 10 inches. 5750 is the growth management quota system maximum, and we're over 1,000 square feet less with 4,472 square feet proposed. We feel that we've shown activity envelope and site plan compliance with ridgeline review because given the site constraints, there is no alternative building location. Wildfire regulations, the properties map within a severe wildfire rating, and we're prepared to comply with all the land use code requirements for this constraint. Pursuant to administrative decision 15-2019, we're developing as much floor area as feasible on slopes less than 30%. And then once again, too, we are setback compliant with AR10 zone district, and we're not requesting any variances. We'd also like to add that we have submitted a complete preliminary design review application to the Brush Creek Landowners Association and their architectural review committee for consideration. But given the timing of the holidays and other delays, we are scheduled to be reviewed by the architectural review committee on January 28th. And we're waiting to hear confirmation on this date. And once confirmed, we'd like to reach out to the neighbors to include them on the preliminary architectural review committee process. And Sarah, that's the end of my presentation. Would it be okay if Eduardo and Pato would like just take a minute to say a few words on their own behalf on the proposal? So if that's okay, we'd like to give them that opportunity.
That'd be great. I was going to ask. So yes, please go ahead. Thanks.
Okay. And then once they're done too, Sarah, just one more thing on the staff recommendation too.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. It's my pleasure to be here together with all of you. So first thing that I want to express is my gratitude to the Pitkin County for their review and efforts for this project. Secondly, want to express how we love this property and why we wish to build a residence. So we have been coming to Aspen for 15 years. I remember when my daughter was 2 years old, it was the first time that we came to Aspen. Since that moment, we started to try to find a property, a piece of land to build a residence for us and for my retirement in the near future. So a single floor living, no stairs, because I plan to age in my new home. So this is our project, to stay there and to retire in the near future. I'm fully aware about the scenic impacts from Brush Creek Road, but seated the house to avoid step slopes and the potential avalanches are lower on the site, consistent with the code and the 2019 land use approval. Also want to provide thanks to the Brush Creek Homeowners Association and we look forward to the architectural committee preliminary review processes. I don't know if my wife, Patricia Pato, wants to say something else.
I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eduardo and Pato. And then just in conclusion, Sarah, it's been great working with Leslie on the application, and we understand her recommendation. And should you not want to provide an approval on our request, we are ready to accept the continuance and work on the issues identified in the staff memo.
Great, thanks, Mike. Anything else?
That's all we had. Thank you.
Okay, I've got one quick question for you, and then I've got a question for Leslie. So I noted that the wildfire rating is severe. Did you guys have to provide a wildfire expert report for this?
Flynn, I don't know if you can answer that one in your land use application, but I don't think we did, and I think we elected to comply with the land use code requirements.
Okay, all right.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thanks. And then Leslie, I had a question for you as well. Under the administrative modification, it talks about competing standards with respect to basically if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place under the code. And it seems that the prioritization is that you look at the standards affecting health and human safety, which also includes steep slopes over scenic review requirements. So I'm just curious, with your recommendation of perhaps moving the house down the hill, how you see basically complying with that standard.
Sure. You're correct. I mean, the language in the administrative modification does prioritize health and safety and wildlife above scenic. However, our code does provide an opportunity for people to develop in slopes greater than 30%. And there's a series of requirements that accompany that if one is to develop in slopes greater than 30%. So that's, kind of pushing a little bit is, is there an opportunity? For example, their current site plan does have a few encroachments onto slopes greater than 30%. The leach field, we believe, can be easily shifted to stay out of slopes greater than 30%. But where they are proposing the below grade space or the walkout space, there's grading, there's detention chambers, there's some drain pipes. Drain pipe is not a big deal, but there is some grading that happens on slopes greater than 30%. So what I'm suggesting and trying to see if there's kind of this sweet spot in between utilizing slopes greater than 30%, providing all the engineering design work that needs to go with that. And by doing that, is there the ability for the projection into above the ridge line to be reduced? And is there an opportunity via, the code also talks about, when you're talking about scenic, it talks about avoiding a straight plane of a roof line. And although, Flynn explained by having the flat roof and the roof line, you don't have the projected peaks. But again, I'm trying to push to, just a little bit more exploration of utilizing those steep slopes and, the ability of maybe the projection above the ridge line to come down.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just add, any kind of consideration like that is still within the previously approved activity envelope. Where they're proposing to amend the activity envelope, as Mike pointed out, is up at the top of the property adjacent to Red Tail Lane to get the driveway in and the retaining wall. My suggestion is not to explore redoing the activity envelope. In fact, if you note in my memo, when it's all said and done, I would like to see a shrinking of the previously approved activity envelope to just confine the areas of disturbance only.
And Flynn, I have one question for you, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to it. You had indicated that the basement space may not be feasible because of bedrock. Is there any indication if you were to start to move this development further down slope that bedrock would continue, or you're just not going to know till you get started?
Well, we did 2 borings, and the assumption is that this site is pretty much has bedrock throughout. My concern about sliding it down the hill is just destabilizing steep slopes, and it seems like we'd be increasing our erosion issues and creating more stormwater issues for our neighbors below us.
Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And I think how I'll handle it is I'll just sort of go across my screen and call on folks that I know aren't part of the applicant's team or county staff. And if you don't want to speak, just let me know. So the first people I have on the top of my screen is Anne.
Yes, yeah, that's Anne and Stefan Debernet. We just bought the property below the projected development here. We're a 450 Solarway, so we're the big house. Really, my only question is, I welcome new neighbors with the right plan, so that would be lovely. But the question is really about the impact to us, particularly because we're below. Yeah. So having moved from Austin, where we have never dealt with avalanche or many mudslide issues, I'm not very familiar with it. But I am not concerned, but I'd like to understand what are the preventive measures, during construction and post-construction, to the impact of our property in the event there are, new drainage that will, happen because of the new construction that would impact potential mudslides or avalanches, and how can that be mitigated with either structure or trees or things that help prevent any future problems from either the construction or post-construction. So that would be my open question, since I'm not really familiar with the area and how to mitigate those risks.
Thank you. During public hearing, there isn't really a lot of back and forth to answer those questions, but I'll make note of them and talk with Leslie about how to address your questions after the hearing. But thank you. Rick Stevens, did you have any comments? You're muted. Rick, you're muted.
I was asked by the art committee to weigh in. I'm the Metro District Manager. We had reviewed a previous application, and our comments were about road and water and slopes and stability and drainage and a number of other civil things, engineering things. I believe there was a condition that did not allow any soil nailing or horizontal soil stabilization activity that would encroach into the right of way of Medicine-Bow or Red Tail. If I remember correctly, a couple of years ago, Leslie, I think you and I talked about that. But as we're looking at this, and I did talk to Civil, Hans is an associate of mine, and I asked him to provide some cross sections showing the elevations on the Red Tail Lane platform and Medicine-Bow platform that could show cross sections through the site, including the retaining walls, the driveway, and so on, so we could actually physically see how that was going to fit in there in the real world. So that would be nice to have. The water main on Red Tail, I believe, is on that side of the Red Tail Lane, so we have to be careful that we don't encroach into that. So there's just a number, the civil engineering, the leach field, you mentioned the soils. A lot of fields up there these days are having to be mounded. So that is something we'd like to know a little bit more about. Metro doesn't have a formal process. We count on King County's codes and conditions to guide us, but we are responsible for the roads. It's a public right of way, but we own the roads and are responsible for any restoration caused by any damage or any surface improvements, any capital improvements, all that stuff. So we need to see a little bit more detail on the civils. And I can happy to do that offline with the architect and Hans. That's appropriate.
Sarah, may I
Thanks, thanks, Rick. Go ahead,
ask a
Leslie.
question, please? Rick, I would really like that in writing from the Metro District, those points that you laid out.
Okay, well, we have a board meeting Thursday night, and I think I can propose that they author a letter, and we have an officer of the Metro District sign it. I'll let you know how that goes. We have 2 board members on the screen, so.
Well, that would be great because you and I did talk about the road and the driveway's proximity to the road, but you mentioned a couple other things that I think would be important to include in any kind of determination. Please.
Okay. Well, I'll put it on the agenda for Thursday.
Anything else, Rick?
No, we have a process for road cut and the water tap and all that stuff that, that's just normal procedure up in Brush Creek. There isn't anything special about that. Our own forces will perform the work generally on those kinds of things. You get the water service to the property line. I would like to see kind of a utility map to see where they're going to bring power and just in general, so we have that available for our records.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joyce, I have you next up on my screen.
Thanks, Sarah. I just was kind of curious. I took the most recent email or letter from January 5th that shows all the power poles. I mean, all the pole heights, and went out there and saw some discrepancy between the yellow and orange poles, poles C and D, which are 28, both 28 feet and some change. And didn't quite see how they separated like that. To me, they look like they are exactly in line with each other. So I was just curious about that. And then just, that's kind of why I spoke with Rick today. We're concerned about where that hammerhead is in the driveway. And now just realizing that the septic field is uphill, just kind of wondering about that too. So we just need some more details. We need to actually see the kind of be walked through the house corners. I did see the poles for the corners, but they don't really make sense. So we need some formula or someone to walk us through and see what that is really all about.
So Joyce, are you on the architectural review committee, or are you able to participate when that meeting comes up to get those questions answered?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, all right. And you feel like those can be addressed at that review committee?
Yeah, I just, giving it, I didn't really understand exactly. I understand site activity envelope, but site plan review, does that mean everything about the house is approved, or what we're actually doing here today? It's kind of confusing.
Okay, thank you. Joyce, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay, great, thanks. Liz, you're next on the screen.
Hi, everybody. I'm sure glad that I didn't go first because everybody else has some really great points. And I think we're the neighbors across the street that are probably most impacted by the exact location of the home in terms of our view. And I understand that our view is not necessarily what this is all about. It's not, but our suggestion is in line with Leslie's, which is just to relook at everything to see if we could possibly move things a little bit lower. And then something that you had said, Sarah, about the fire plan or the fire activity. Forgive me, what was your exact words to Michael asking if that had been studied?
So the county has mapped the hazard areas, and I assume probably all of your lots are mapped as severe. And if you want to vary the requirements, you can get a wildfire mitigation expert to give a recommendation to the county about how that can be mitigated. But the applicant has opted to just comply with the what's laid out in the code, it sounds like.
Okay, so that what we saw on the screen is what's laid out by code for that specific property?
Yes, yes.
Understood. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess I think it's mainly the impact of the location of the exact property that's really affecting us. So just something to consider in being a good neighbor. And that was it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick, did you have something to add before I go to Jerome?
Yes, I apologize. We just took a look at the administrative decision on the Cougar Canyon parcel and the description. I had a conversation with Rick Valentine. So this has to do with our fire mitigation efforts up in Brush Creek as a metro district. The standards that were expressed in that administrative approval for the activity envelope on the 45 acres were pretty solid. And they did mention, I did talk to Rick a little bit about the map that they did that covers the fire district. So I think that's a key thing for us in Brush Creek, obviously, and has been for a while now. So that's something that I think the Metro District would be interested in seeing as it applies to our district boundary, not just individual lots, but maybe this is an opportunity to get some of that landscaping standard in place as we redevelop the properties up there. Apologize for getting to mention that earlier. Thanks.
Thank you. Jerome, do you have some comments?
Yes. Hello. And Eduardo, nice to meet you. Most of my concerns really related to the time element between this hearing and our January 28th preliminary design review meeting that we're going to be having as the Architectural Review Committee and also our neighbors. And I thank you for the continuance, which I think is reasonable and should have been done. It's a challenging site. My biggest concern, excuse me, is the height of the structure and the possibilities to mitigate the impact both on ridgeline review and the impact of the neighbors. And without going into too much detail, because now we'll be able to discuss it at our meeting, the possibilities of adjusting the roof design, maybe lowering the slope of the roof. Joseph Spears just built a beautiful house on Lower Medicine Bow that has a flat roof. So considerations that possibly can be thought about. Also, the possibility of lowering the structure into grade a little bit more, not reducing your ceiling heights or your interior mass, but possibly working with the grade to lower the building into grade. But with all of that said, I just appreciate the opportunity for the continuance, our ability to discuss it. Other thought, with looking at the floor plans, something that comes to mind, and for people out of our area coming, from Florida, there's an outdoor kitchen proposed, And our policy is not to approve outdoor kitchens because we have a very intense problem with bears. And I'm directly next door. The bear took a bite out of our spa cover. We have trouble with them breaking into cars and into the houses to get to the kitchens. With an outdoor kitchen with a refrigerator, preparation area, so on and so forth, that becomes a real concern. So I just thought I would throw it out there since we're all together. But with that said, I just appreciate the opportunity for the continuance and for all of us to meet on January 28th and continue with the conversation.
Great, thank you. Stuart, I see you're there. Do you have anything to add?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm Jerome Meister on the stand or the, the screen, but I'm a new member of the architectural committee and kind of catching up on this. And one thing in regards to height that I just maybe want a correction on the code. I thought a shed roof was measured to its maximum height, not the midpoint calculations. Kind of like a flat roof would be with a parapet wall. I always understood that would be a 28-foot maximum height, not a midpoint, E-point to top of ridge calculation. So that's something we can look at. It's definitely down there at the southeast corner where it already appears over 28 from existing grade. Who knows where the finished grade is going to be? I noticed there's a wine room proposed down there and windows. And I don't know where the finished grade of those window sills are going to be, which would greatly affect the overall maximum height measured from finished grade to the peak of the shed roof, not midpoint. And that'd be a question for Leslie, Joanna, whoever. But and then the hammerhead, Rick touched on it because that does get up toward Metro District stuff. And it looks awful close to the setback and to the street easement, water lines and such. So those are just things I just looked at real quick and look forward to further review, later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Did I miss anybody?
That is everyone, and we have no one else in attendance.
Okay, thanks, Bonnie. Okay, so as I had mentioned at the beginning, staff has recommended continuance and did not provide a administrative modification for the hearing officer to base a decision off of. I do agree with staff with respect to providing some additional information so that I can make a determination with respect to the administrative modification. Probably foremost for me is color palette and exterior materials to see how much that's going to show up with respect to from the scenic review areas. I would ask the applicant to also provide an analysis of how the height and bulk are designed to avoid visibility of the building from Brush Creek Road and Highway 82 in the scenic review areas. I will say that I am fairly reluctant to ask the applicant to look at a redesign further down the hill, given the steep slopes and the priorities that are outlined in the code for an administrative modification. And then the other item that Leslie requested, which she may need to provide more detail on, is more detail on the slope of the driveway and inside and outside turn radiuses per the Aspen Fire Protection District standards for the driveways. And Leslie, I don't know how, Mike, is that enough detail for you, Mike and Flynn, or do you want Leslie to provide you more detail on that?
No, I think we understood the comments, and we can ask our civil engineer to provide more cut sections and detail on the driveway.
Great. So with that, I am going to continue the hearing. I think we had talked about with county staff, February 15th. Does that work for everyone?
That would work for Eduardo and Pato on our team.
Okay. County staff, does that work? And Jerome, I know you were particularly worried about the timing with the design review committee or architectural review committee date. So I think that's going to work as well. Or do you guys go for one or several hearings?
Well, it's a two-step process. We have the preliminary review and then the final review. And it's possibly cutting it a little bit tight. If we're meeting on January 28th for preliminary, then I think in fairness to everybody, if we could have our final review before the hearing, that might be most expeditious, but we could try and make it work. Joyce, what do you think? Joyce?
It depends on if we have everything we need, and yeah, I mean, maybe it is pretty close to February 15th.
How long does it typically take between preliminary and final?
Well, you know, we never had a chance to go through the site with Mike or the architect, so you know, that all depends on everybody's schedule.
Okay, all right. Yes, Gwen.
I just want to understand, now that I have the Architectural Control Committee and Pitkin County at the same meeting, you know, from my perspective, the final presentation or submittal to the Architectural Control Committee is essentially, to my knowledge, a building permit set. It would be the same set of drawings we take to the building department. And so in my mind, there's some conflict in creating a permit set of drawings for the Architectural Control Committee that we would subsequently have a hearing officer meeting on following that final submittal. And I just want to understand that that's the desired process from everyone, because I would assume the hearing officer and the county might have their own requirements that aren't incorporated into the final application with the Architectural Control Committee.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, obviously, we're looking at the county requirements, just trying to make it work so that, you know, at county staff's suggestion, at least there is some dialogue between the neighbors and the applicant with respect to the building. So my inclination is to stick with the February 15th hearing. And then if it comes down to it needing to be continued for some reason, then we can go ahead and work on that at that point in time, so we can keep this process moving forward for the applicant.
That sounds fine.
Okay.
On my end, we'll do our best to try and make things work.
Great, thank you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and continue the hearing to February 15th. Leslie and Suzanne, same time, 3 p.m. Okay, anything else I need to include?
Sarah, may I ask a quick question? Just a quick question so I can understand the process. Is that allowed?
Yes, sure.
Thank you so much. I just was wondering, I just was taking notes as you were kind of sharing, and I heard that you were reluctant to suggest a redesign further down the hill. And I just wanted to understand why that is, because we do have a house that's built just around the corner and it's completely within the hill, and it's also on the same sort of steep slope. So what is that? What's coming up for you that makes you not open to that possibility?
So there's two provisions in the code that one says you can't build on steep slopes and one says scenic, you can't break the ridge line except under certain conditions, and the code gives direction to basically prioritize avoidance of steep slopes over the ridge line. So I'm reluctant to tell the applicant to go chase their tails if that's something that really can't get approved under the code. So.
Understood. So the home that's further down the hill that was built on a steep slope was probably had all these different conditions that maybe.
Probably, and
Probably, we don't know.
Yeah, I didn't.
We're not commenting on that. Okay. Okay. Just wanted to understand. All right. Thank you for that.
Okay. No problem. No problem. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Applicant, do you guys have anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend what would be really helpful is the application included a really good soils analysis of the property. It really talks about the bedrock, but the application is really thin on any kind of engineering design and engineering standards. I think the report from the engineer is about 2 pages, 3 pages long. I think it might help the neighbors if the applicant team could just, and also for the neighbors downslope, to just beef up that engineering and talk about, safety, and like Rick Stevens requested, driveway cuts and things like that, to just kind of, beef up the application a little bit. There is a wildfire mitigation report that was submitted as part of the activity envelope review. And I'll be, going through that and make sure that there were no conditions in that report that shouldn't be carried over into this hearing officer determination. But since it did come up today in the hearing, that there is some concern for engineering, and yes, we require an access permit. Yes, we require a drainage report to make sure that, drainage doesn't affect properties surrounding this property. I would just think it would be good if you guys kind of took a harder look at what was provided in the application, maybe beef it up a little bit, because I'm going to be looking from the Metro District to help me out with that stuff as well.
And I'm just going to say that it's one thing, again, going back to the slope, totally understand the top part of the property with the driveway access and all of that, but below it is as important. Gravity is critical. So I really thank you, Leslie, for bringing that up again.
Okay, applicants, you guys good?
Yeah, I just want to make myself available to all the neighbors if they have questions about the design, and I can answer specific questions related to, the soil erosion, your avalanche questions, how we contain, all that, the mud, etc. on our property. I can provide my email address, and I know the Architectural Control Committee has it. So feel free to send that out to everyone at the meeting today.
Great. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.